starting with article number 1, I found this on LinkedIn, and it's from a translator. It's a Japanese translator. I think he translates mainly from English into Japanese, and his name is Hayataki Masaharu. So he has this pretty long article on LinkedIn. I just left a comment because I found it on my way to the office, and it was so long, so I just quickly skimmed through it. But all the subheadings looked like it could be a very, very good article, which basically is about, the title is 5 Overlooked Elements of Web Content Translation that Makes Successful Localization. But this article basically says what other skills than translation the translators need to make them more successful. And it talks a lot about the other elements like marketing, SEO, design, and copywriting. And so now that I finally read it today, right before I started recording for this podcast, it really did deliver the value that I expected it to be. So that's the reason why this article is the first one in today's episode. And so let's get right into it. Web development is a complicated process that involves marketing, design, search engine optimization, and copywriting. So this is kind of like introduction to what I already mentioned. What is that? It's like a whole complex thing that translators need to tackle. And so let's get into the overlooked elements. So number 1, translators need to know marketing. In Norway, a Big Mac costs $5.65 USD, and the GDP per person is 97,013 USD, which means on average Norwegians can buy 17,170 Big Macs a year. This makes Big Macs casual food for the average Joe in Norway. However, in India, a Big Mac costs only $1.83 USD, but the GDP per person there is only 1,627 USD, which means on average Indians can buy 889 Big Macs a year. So that's 889 versus 17,170 in Norway. This means a Big Mac is a fancy food for rich people and tourists in India. Marketing is not as simple as that, but this Big Mac index demonstrates that when entering an overseas market, you need to consider changing price and or adjust your marketing approach due to different pricing and economic environments. The above information should be collected and considered before entering an overseas market and translating websites, posters, product catalogs, or anything related to marketing. However, overseas market research is not only time-consuming, but also difficult to execute because of language barriers. In many cases, it is more efficient to go ahead and translate marketing materials. Translators would not know when price of product is a super deal or cheaper than everyday milk, and they should report to the project manager when the text doesn't fit the local market. Marketing is not only about pricing. There might be a local competitor that conflicts with the unique sales proposition of your products. There might be a local distribution channel or another platform for selling. Translators have no language barrier to make local marketing research harder. They should know the target audience and possess customer insight to write sales copy. Who better than translators to conduct local market research? So what am I thinking here? So first of all, I definitely like this idea. When I was reading this article, the first thing that came to my mind is kind of like a throwback to the very first episode of the Localization Podcast, where I was talking about like the future role of translators, assuming that NMT will eventually create a quality that will be kind of like the same level as human translation. So this is definitely some extra value that the translators could bring in, and it would make them better and more valuable compared to an AI who, let's say, will just do like a good translation. And also another thing that this reminds me of, and actually this whole article, so we will get to the next elements later on, but just the idea that I was saying before, and I still have it kind of like in my backlog as like one of the potential business ideas, is that like LSPs typically, or in my experience, they mostly do just the localization, or maybe they do I don't know, transcreation or something like that. But we had a couple of articles on the previous episodes where we were talking about like how products are changing and how they're different in various markets. And I was wondering if actually any LSPs are able to deliver such a value to the customers, or if it's usually, which I would assume is the case, it's usually the result of like the local marketing or sales team of the company which sells the or creates the products. In this case, like I think like the current way that this is being done is like I think it depends on the size of the company that creates these products and these marketing materials, whether they do have any local marketers in the country which should be able to kind of like alter not just the pricing, but like, is it like a fancy product or is it like an average product? And yeah, I'm so off today. And who better than translators to conduct local market research? I think this is kind of funny because it brings me back to one discussion that I just recently saw on LinkedIn. It was between one very special translator who was kind of like shitting on all the CAT tools and saying like how much money he makes by translating, and that he leaves most of the work for the proofreaders. But I kind of understood that like he brings his massive value that he brings to his customers is because he is kind of like very specialized in like a certain niche, and like he knows like the right words to use or how to describe this. So yeah, I think that like right now, like for example, like if you are hiring translators, many of them, they say that they specialize in fields like IT, technology, or they even like mix it. So that kind of means that you are like capable of doing like very generic translation, like you have some understanding of IT, but maybe what is required here is that maybe if translators, some of them probably do have it because of just the way that their other non-translation interests align with their translation expertise. And I'm just so confused right now what I'm saying. So what I'm trying to say is that not every translator like can do like a market research, proper market research. Like many can probably say that like if you request like a translation from someone who is in China, and they will say that, oh, in China we use, you know, different search engine, we don't use Amazon, but we use Alibaba and similar things. But let's say okay, here's maybe a good example. Let's say you are like a new coffee manufacturer, like you have like your chain of coffee shops and you want to go into China. So you're looking like for like a consumer products specialized translator, but maybe one of these translators who claim to have this expertise in the field is like real like a geek when it comes to coffee. Like he's like a coffee enthusiast, like he knows everything, he tries everything new, he pretty much knows the coffee market in China. So that person would definitely be the right one to pick for this job, because not only can they translate, but they're like expert in the niche and in the market within China that you're trying to get into. And of course, this would definitely increase the value of that particular translator compared to the other ones who maybe have like a huge experience translating for consumer products, but they just don't have that touch or connection with the coffee market in China. Yeah, so I think maybe that's like one of the future role of translators, that they would not just be post-editing machine translation, but they would also look at the market conditions and advise on a different level. And I just cannot speak today. Okay. Number 2. So there are 5 total, so this is number 2. Translators need to know laws. In the UK, low in alcohol is defined between 0.5% and 1.2% alcohol by law, and advertisers cannot claim the drink is low in alcohol if it contains more than that. Regulation of advertisements is different in each country. You might be tempted to ignore the laws, but the cost of losing your customers' trust is greater than any fine. Regulations in Japan are very strict compared to most Western countries. Here's one example from Japan. It's the Act Against Unjustifiable Premiums and Misleading Representations. The Act Against Unjustifiable Premiums and Misleading Representations is a part of the Japan anti-monopoly law, which regulates deceptive consumer practices. The law prohibits representation on the quality, quantity, standards, or likes from being shown much better than reality, or representation without evidence that supports the claim. For example, the law prohibits phrases like the best or effective without supporting evidence. The law also prohibits false discounts that misleads consumers about the regular price, discounts, and several other things. So law is something definitely that I have never thought of, and having translators be able to or be familiar like with law for a certain niche is something very, very special. I don't think like that many people know, but again, this comes down to the deep expertise that I was mentioning before on the example of the coffee. So maybe some people who are like the coffee enthusiasts and they know the market from the consumer perspective, and like what are the players, what's their value proposition, what are the prices, what are the great places, what are the locations. So maybe this goes even further, getting down to law, but I don't think that actually, well, maybe the translators could point out something when it comes to the law, but yeah, this is like a really tricky part. I never liked dealing with the legal stuff when it comes to translation. But again, like if translators had such a knowledge, it would definitely make them stand out. Okay, let's move on to number 3. Translators need to know SEO. You might be walking through a small, quiet street when you stumble upon a nice hidden cafe with unmarked entrances. That never happens on the internet because you need to enter specific keywords and click next many times to find hidden websites. Websites need to be optimized to be found by the right visitors. The technique to achieve that is called search engine optimization. One of the most important components of SEO is keyword optimization. Use keywords that users search on key components of website, including title, meta description, header tags, alt keywords of images, category, etc. When translating websites, translators need to use keywords with high volume in natural text. Search engine optimized translation improves ranking on search engine results page, drives traffic, and increases awareness in search engines. Making translated text search engine friendly takes very little effort, but the impact of it, or rather the impact from the lack of it, is not so small. You want to make sure that translators have established an efficient process to deliver SEO translation. So I did mention a little experience with SEO localization. That was when I was working with Alpha and Autodesk, which was kind of like I was part of the team that was handling Autodesk projects. So Autodesk decided to outsource the SEO localization for the first time, and I was kind of like building the process for SEO localization along with my boss, and it was basically just like a basic process, but I think even like because it was kind of like a version 1.0 of the process, it was not refined further. But even just this basic thinking of like how to arrive to the SEO keywords, like the research that you have to do, which is not very complicated, even that I think is still delivers a lot of value compared to just localizing the keywords. Because translators, like I don't think, like unless they already have experience with SEO. So first of all, SEO is kind of like more like a technical thing to know like what actually these things mean, especially if like just like the title and the keywords and the meta description is just like extracted in the CAT tool, and you don't, maybe in many cases don't even know that this is important for SEO. So you just treat it like a text and you just don't think about like how you would localize it. Not to mention the fact that you probably don't even make any research, because like if you had to do research, you would expect to be paid for it. It's not just like translating or localizing and just getting stuff from MT or TM. So yeah, and I'm not sure like if people who are doing website translation on a regular basis, let's say you have like regular content updates or new content, if the buyers are actually aware, or if the LSPs are even proposing that there should be like a separate process for the SEO part to make the actual translations of the content itself more valuable, because doing a proper SEO localization simply brings more traffic to the localized content and therefore increases the ROI of the translation of the content. So yeah, yep, another great point. So moving on to number 4, translators need to know copywriting. Copywriting. Many may think they know what it is, but few know what it really is. The difference between writing and copywriting is that writing is usually to inform, whereas copywriting is to get people to take action. The word copywriter includes the word writer, but copywriters spend often very little time writing in copywriting process. Copywriting projects consist of research and analysis of marketing environments, including customer insight and competitors, an interview with a product planning manager, editing, proofreading, sourcing and editing images, and planning and implementing marketing campaigns. Copywriting projects are often executed by a team consisting of a creative director, market researchers, graphic or video editors, and copywriters. Since copywriting is a part of marketing and marketing is a part of copywriting, requires adjustments to local market environments when entering foreign markets. However, executing the entire copywriting process, including marketing research and graphic design, is not only an expensive option, but also runs the risk of creating a different brand image in the foreign market. An affordable solution to localize websites is to hire a native translator, with marketing and copywriting experience for all important components of copywriting: market research, writing, and design. So yeah, I think we did have a couple of articles, and even I was mentioning it before when it comes to transcreation. So transcreation to me is kind of like a next step after localization, which basically is like a blend of translation and copywriting, and it's mostly relevant for marketing materials, of course. And so yeah, this whole article is about website translation. So website usually has a certain purpose, whether it's to drive leads or to sell a product. So that of course requires copywriting skills on the English or source side. And then of course the translators should be able, as a part of their work, to do a certain level of copywriting themselves. It's funny because like this guy mentions that many people often forget the writing in the copywriting process, which I would hope that most of the translators actually are kind of like writers, maybe just like the good ones, because that's part of like what you're expected to do when you offer localization services, right? It's not just like translate word by word like a machine, but you need to make everything sound natural and nice, as if it was written in the in your own native language. So that to me kind of like it's writing already on its own. So copywriting, it's kind of like adding that marketing tone, or like really playing with the words to make sure they hit the nail on the head. Okay, and last part is translators need to know design. Localization necessitates the rethinking of even visual design. Let's take a look at a big international company with successful localization. The Coca-Cola company has different eye-catching images and designs for 20 different locations. So there are 4 images here. I think one of them is Japanese. One of them is probably Chinese. Then there's like Arabic one. And then there's probably like a US version. So yeah, the home pages are totally different. And it's not only the hero image. The hero image takes like most of the space, but like the whole layout is slightly different. Well, not the top menu structure. And also in one language, Coca-Cola is actually translated. Okay, let's get back to the article. However, design localization is not only an expensive option, but may also compromise brand identity. Having an internationally unified design has its advantages, including coherent branding, efficiency, lower cost, and less complication. So what design components can be localized without compromising brand identity? Eye-catching images. Which photo is a better eye-catching image for a web page about affordable family health insurance for middle-class Japanese in Japan? It does not take a fancy survey or an academic paper to tell that the Japanese audience can relate to the picture on the left more. So those of you who are listening, there are 2 images. One on the left, the one that's of course more accurate, is actually a Japanese looking like family. Father, mother, and 2 kids. And then the right image is people who look like, I don't know, it's like Indian or, well, not Filipino, but they definitely don't look Japanese. So just based on the race, of course, it's probably better to show Japanese people to the Japanese market. And here he continues, it takes very little effort or cost to replace and localize photos. There are many stock photo websites that you can download stock photos available for commercial projects for free or for very little money. Second thing, how you can affect design component is color palette. A Coca-Cola page has different color palettes, except for the Coca-Cola trademark red. each red and green color has slightly different saturation. For example, the saturation of green on the post header is darker on the Japanese website. And finally, typography. This is what many people think of when they hear the word typography. But typography isn't just a creative graphic design. It's also setting the right kerning, line height, typeface, color, and size to assure readability, legibility, visibility, as well as delivering your brand message. This is the reason why designers spend days and weeks to create a logo with original typeface that represents a company's brand identity. This is why the New York Times, both newspaper and website, are beautiful, even though they have very few colors and graphics. Typography is equally important in Japanese or in any other language. Arabic, for example, is a right-to-left writing system, so left-to-right web design is almost disturbing to users. Traditional Chinese and Japanese have very complicated logographic characters called kanji. Whereas the high stroke count of the English alphabet is 4, the high stroke of kanji is 84. The high stroke kanji that college students should be able to read and write is 23. The high stroke kanji that is included in font file MS Gothic or MS Mincho is 33 strokes. Obviously, you should never use less than a 12 pixel font. Final words about this article from my side, and I think I'll just probably repeat what I tried to say when I was talking about the first thing, which is marketing. Like, if there were translators that would be able to deliver all these extra values, so certain expertise in marketing, in law, in SEO, in copywriting, and in design, then they would really be super valuable, and they probably wouldn't have to fear having their jobs taken by NMT in the near future. And if you think about it, if you're able to identify these super translators in different regions, they would be the first, for me, the choice when it comes to the business idea that I was sharing previously, which is, instead of just doing localization, would there be like a special, what if there was like an LSP that would give the chance, especially for startups, to simply like test their presence in a certain market, which would require a proper localization, working with translators who know a few things about marketing, SEO, design, and including the law. And he would just basically run these smaller experiments, which would then tell your client if it's worth it entering that market or not. So you would be just like the agency that just tests the market and prepares the ground work for them to enter the market once they see like a certain ROI in that market. I'm sorry, but I'm like really having troubles expressing my thoughts today. I'm not sure if it made sense. But yeah, this article is very good. I don't think I've actually seen anyone put it together as like this big picture. We definitely saw a couple of mentions of translators knowing something about target market. We also saw, of course, translators required to know how to do copywriting, which basically means they're called transcreators. We also talk about SEO, but I have never before stumbled upon an article that would also mention certain experience with the law or expertise. And then, of course, design is another important thing. So if there are any translators out there who know all of these disciplines and they actively use it in their translations, or they like give feedback back to their customers, then I think that would be like a very rare case. And yeah, they should be called super translators.